Hello, beautiful people. So, Killeen, Texas gets a really bad reputation, but I honestly think that it is not so deserving of that. We're going to get into my top 3 pros and cons about living in Killeen. All right, so I actually graduated high school in Killeen, just to give you a little context. Been doing real estate there for about 5 years now, and I recently moved out of Killeen. And I did it for some of the reasons that I'll list here, but really it was planned all along for my family and I to kind of upgrade our lifestyle eventually. So that's what we did. I still do majority of my business in Killeen and still sell majority of the homes in Killeen, and I'm super familiar with that community. Love that community. So for those out there who are thinking about moving to Killeen, Texas, I wanted to give you my perspective of a few pros and cons about living there and let you know it's really not as bad as a lot of people like to make it out to be. So my number 1 pro, I'll start with the pros. Number 1 pro is going to be the food. Man, the food is everything. A lot of mom and pop shops that give a lot of unique perspectives on Puerto Rican food, Korean food, Jamaican food, and there are multiple Puerto Rican, Korean, Jamaican, Venezuelan. There are multiple places, and they all kind of have their own unique take on that style of food. So one place doesn't necessarily taste like the other. Man, you can find some really, really good food options there. Some great hole in the walls that, you see them on the outside, and in a bigger city, you might not trust them. Trust it. Go inside, get the food, enjoy. My number 1 thing that got my wife to actually move from downtown Austin to Killeen with me was the food. Food options are amazing. All right. Number 2, it is still pretty affordable compared to a couple different places. So it's sandwiched in between Waco and Austin, and compared to those two, it is still very much affordable, even with all of the raising of housing prices. It has gone up significantly, but it is still pretty affordable, definitely more affordable than Austin metro area and even out into the Waco side of things. Average price for a house right now is about $226. So that is still really solid, and that's actually right on par with the national average. But if you got in a few years earlier, then you got a way better price on your house. And you probably got a good chunk of equity. So still affordable. Cost of living there, tax rate there is pretty affordable, and like the cost of goods and services. So still affordable. That is a number 2 pro for living in Killeen. And number 3, it is really, really diverse. It is this beautiful array of people from different places, cultures, backgrounds, races. It is magnificent. And if you just go 20 minutes up the road, it gets a lot more homogenous. But the actual Killeen, Fort Hood, Harker Heights area is such a beautiful rainbow of people, and I think that's why you get the great mom and pop food joints. The more people you got, different cultures, the better the food. I mean, I feel like that is a standard rule. It is an amazing place. Your neighbor to the left and your neighbor to the right are probably going to be from 2 totally different places, and that's probably because they or their family members were in the military, which, if you know, Killeen is huge military town. It's right outside of the biggest army base in the country, Fort Hood. And so a lot of the population is either prior military or currently military, and that makes for an amazing melting pot of people. All right, so my 3 pros: great food, it is still pretty affordable, and it is super duper diverse. So if those 3 things are on the top of your list, you might want to give Killeen a try. So next, we're gonna go to the cons. And there are, just like any city, there's a lot of things wrong with Killeen, but there are also a lot of things right. I just want to touch on some of the cons from my and my wife's experience, like living there and breathing the air every day and experiencing the lifestyle and the culture. I do think your experience in Killeen will be how you live your life. So that is going to determine what your experience is like. But the number one thing for us that was an issue was there was no real nightlife. Or we're big date people, right? So me and my wife love to go out and experience new places and things, and Killeen is just not really made for that. The only thing that we could kind of do was go out to a few different restaurants that was amazing. But when we wanted to go to a really fancy place, then we had to go to Austin. Or if there was a show that we wanted to catch, we would have to go to Austin. The one thing that Killeen actually does have really great on the nightlife side is a good comedy club that gets some really, really great acts. Twice as Funny Comedy Lounge, I will give them a shout out even though they didn't pay for any advertisement, but that is one of the best places that we found that we could go on a date. Other than that, we had to go closer to the Austin area, so that was a big con for us, the lack of a nightlife. The other thing to kind of go back, it's kind of the opposite of the diversity thing. As far as houses go, they kind of all look the same. The neighborhoods get a little bit homogenous, so living on this side of town and that side of town are really similar. There's no big, huge master plan communities that offer tons of amenities. Everything is pretty similar, pretty much the same builders and floor plans. Now, this is not complete, right? That's not the complete picture, but from neighborhood to neighborhood, you will see a lot of similarities in floor plans, especially if you are in a certain price point. So for us, when we were purchasing the house, that was kind of a turn off because we were man, we're seeing the same things over and over again. And then especially me, since I'm in and out of hundreds of houses a year, then I definitely see the similarities. So, that was one for me, that all the neighborhoods kind of look the same. The other con for us was services aren't great. We had a lot of issues with restaurants and different stores not having the items that we would want, or other services just not happening or coming to the Killeen area. And big shouts out to all of my people on the grind that are service workers out there doing your thing. I respect what you do, but sometimes we would have bad experiences with the level of service. I think that comes due to a lack of competition. When you get into larger areas, there are more businesses that kind of offer the same service. So when competing with one another, they will either go to price or level of service, or both, right? And so you go to one place and you will get a better service than the other, you're gonna choose that place even though they offer the same thing. I think Killeen doesn't have that level of competition, so the service providers can be a little lax. I think that's a good way to put it. But yeah, that was one of our biggest headaches, was a lot of the services that we wanted were not available. And a lot of times when we did shop in a lot of the places, we weren't getting great service. So that was a big con for us. But if you will notice, one of the cons that I did not list, one of the things that Killeen is famous for, is violent crimes. So my wife and I actually lived in the less desirable part of the city so that we could invest in that growth and save money in the process. And we had zero problems with crime. The news stories about Killeen they're out there, and that's real. People are going through that every day, but I'm a firm believer that crime has no address. So to single Killeen out as a place where this is just super prominent, I think is a little bit unfair. Does it happen? Yes. Does it it happen more than it should? Yes. I've not had any experience with it, nor has my family. We consider ourselves very fortunate in that right, but I do think that Killeen should be considered further than just its reputation in the news. I think that you can find a great neighborhood for you and your family, a great area to be in where you will not have to worry about any violent crime. And a lot of that violent crime comes from the lifestyle that certain people are living. So I will say Killeen does not deserve the super bad reputation that it gets sometimes. One of my other cons is a bonus con is when I tell people that I was living in Killeen, that they give me like the yikes look. It does not deserve the yikes look. It is actually a really good place to live. It took care of me and my family and actually generations before us. And I think it will take care of generations after us. It has been a great place for minorities and peoples of different cultures to build wealth via real estate, and it has done a lot of good for a lot of people. So if you're considering Killeen, take these things into consideration, but I'll say Killeen should be a yes on your list. I would absolutely recommend somebody to live there. And if you're thinking about buying and selling in the Killeen area, I would love to help out with that. All right. Other than that, I'll see you on the flip side. Peace.